had every reason to fight back. They hurt you. They lied. They took something from you, your time, your trust, maybe your sense of self. And everyone around you was waiting for it. The confrontation, the clapback, the moment you'd finally say everything you'd been rehearsing at 2 a.m. in the dark. But you didn't. You packed quietly. You deleted the number. You stopped showing up. You let them wonder, and the strangest part? It didn't feel like weakness. It felt like the most powerful thing you'd ever done, even though you couldn't explain why. This looks like letting go, but it's actually something far more profound than that. Here's what nobody tells you about the person who walks away without burning anything down. They're not the ones who couldn't fight. They're the ones whose nervous system found something more valuable than winning. And if that's you, if you've ever chosen silence over spectacle, distance over destruction, you are not passive. You are not weak. You are not broken. Your brain made a calculation, a quiet, ancient, surprisingly intelligent calculation, and it chose something that felt like peace over something that felt like power. That distinction matters more than most people realize. There's a moment that happens inside certain people. A threshold. The situation is charged, the emotions are real, the stakes feel enormous, and right at the edge of reaction, something in them steps back. Not because they don't care, because they care about something deeper than the outcome of this particular war. Psychologists call this emotional self-regulation, the brain's ability to pause between stimulus and response. But that clinical phrase doesn't capture what it actually feels like. What it feels like is choosing your own inner weather over someone else's storm. Think about someone you know who grew up in a chaotic household. Raised voices, unpredictability, emotions as weapons. As a child, they learned something crucial. Reacting made things worse. Escalation wasn't safety. So their nervous system, wired for survival, learned to go quiet instead of loud, to exit instead of explode, not because it was the right choice, because it was the safe one. That pattern didn't disappear when they grew up. It became a default. And for many people, walking away from conflict without revenge isn't a spiritual achievement. It's a deeply ingrained nervous system response that once kept them protected. But here's the part nobody tells you. That same behavior, choosing to leave cleanly, doesn't just protect you from chaos. It protects something else. Your self-concept, the internal story you carry about who you are. When you engage in revenge, even when it's justified, you have to become someone capable of it. And for certain people, that identity shift feels more threatening than the original wound. There's a branch of psychology that studies identity protective cognition, the way people make decisions not just based on logic or emotion, but based on what feels consistent with who they believe themselves to be. When walking away is part of your identity, I am not someone who destroys people, even the ones who hurt me, then revenge isn't just undesirable. It feels like self-betrayal. Imagine someone who spent years watching a parent exact revenge on people who wronged them. The cold phone calls, the petty sabotage, the slow burn of holding grudges, and the child watched and thought, I will never be that. That promise made silently to themselves becomes part of their architecture. Years later, when someone hurts them, the refusal to retaliate isn't forgiveness. It's identity preservation. It's them keeping a promise to a younger version of themselves who needed something better to believe in. And this is where it gets interesting, because walking away without revenge doesn't mean the feelings went nowhere. The anger is real. The grief is real. The desire, somewhere, briefly, to make them feel what you felt, also real. But something in the mind redirects that energy, not suppresses it. Redirects it. Research into what's called the approach-avoidance conflict shows that when we are drawn towards something, like confrontation, like revenge, like the satisfaction of being right in front of the person who wronged us, and simultaneously repelled by it because of fear, values, or self-preservation. The mind creates a third path. It doesn't just choose one force over the other, it roots around both. Walking away is often that third path. It isn't giving up, it isn't forgiveness, it isn't even healing. Not yet. It's the mind saying, I cannot afford the cost of what crossing that line would take from me. Think about the athlete who gets fouled hard in a game. A cheap shot, clearly intentional. The crowd wants the retaliation. Their teammates expect it, and they skate away. Not because it didn't hurt, because somewhere in their training, in their discipline, they learn that one reactive moment can erase years of reputation. The walkaway is strategic, but it's also something else, a quiet form of self-respect that doesn't need an audience. Here's what shifts as you get older. In your 20s, walking away without revenge can feel like loss, like you let them win, like you swallowed something that deserved to be said. There's a residue, an unfinished sentence that lives somewhere in your chest for years. But something happens with time. The same behavior, that same quiet exit, starts to feel different. Not because the situation changed, because you changed, because you've now lived long enough to see what revenge actually costs the people who choose it. You've watched someone spend 3 years engineering the downfall of a person who wronged them, and seen how hollowed out they look when it's over. You've seen the person who sent the final devastating message, and noticed they still check the other person's social media every morning. Revenge promises closure, but closure isn't something another person can give you, and some part of you, maybe the part that walked away quietly, always knew that. The truth about leaving without destruction is that it functions like an anchor. In the middle of emotional chaos, betrayal, humiliation, grief, the mind is looking for something to hold. Some people hold on to the fight. They make the confrontation their anchor point. The argument gives them something to return to, something that feels like solid ground. But for others, the anchor is the exit itself. The act of leaving becomes the stable thing, the controlled thing. In a situation that felt entirely out of their control, the way they were treated, the way it ended, the things that were said, the one thing they could author was how they left. And the mind holds on to that, like a blanket in the dark, like a room that always smells the same. There is regulation in it. There is something that says, whatever happened to me, I did not lose myself in it. That is not a small thing. You may never get the apology. You may never get the explanation. The person who hurt you may live an entirely undisturbed life, unaware of or indifferent to the damage they caused. And somewhere inside you, there might be a part that still wants them to know, wants them to feel even a fraction of what you felt. That part of you is human. It is not something to be ashamed of. But there is another part, the part that chose to leave without fire. And that part was also protecting you. It was saying, your energy is worth more than their reaction. Your peace is not contingent on their punishment. That isn't wisdom you read in a book. That's something the nervous system learns through living, through choosing again and again not to become the thing that hurt you. So if you are someone who has walked away quietly from people, from situations, from relationships that cost more than they gave, know this: you didn't lose. You made a choice so quiet it looked like nothing, but something in you knew it was everything. The absence of revenge is not the absence of power. Sometimes it is the most precise expression of it. You don't need anyone to understand that. You already do.